Alright, making a video. Yes, it's not going to impress too many people, especially lately. Ew. Anyway, just the making of video number 2. And I guess I'll get to the point of the stories. Stories related to the big conversation. You know, the big conversation about what life is in the universe. And so the point is to talk about stories, movie scripts, that kind of thing, that have been rolling around in my head that I've never really gotten around to writing about. And one involves kind of the conversation that might take place, where a civilization would be deciding what to do with its destiny, you know, recognizing certain limitations, certain futilities of existence, and that we're just, we're just carnival goers. You know, we just want to have a carnival to go to be entertained. We're an audience feeding on an environment, and we just want the environment to make us laugh, or to give us an adventure, or a puzzle to solve, or some kind of thing. It's games. We just play games. That's what life is, just a series of little games you play. This video is kind of a game I'm playing. It has strategy involved. Try to do something meaningful, try to say something important. All that kind of crap is veiled in it somewhere. And, you know, this is the dilemma, let's say. And so, in one vision of a story, every 1,000 years, let's say, there's a little node of what's left of life on Earth, let's say, human life. And there's a decision to be made whether to try to do something with it. It's been shut down. And let's just say it restores random personalities from different eras. So there would be a person from say the year 2020, when they could have the technology, let's say, first have the technology to be able to store the essence of an individual, let's say digitally or something. 2030, whatever the number is. And then there'd be one from 2080 and to 2190 and 2250 or whatever. And these different beings would, over a series of conversations, talk about what life was and what potential it had, and decide whether to stay silent for another 1,000 years, or something like that, 10,000 we could say. And the idea would be they'd be listening to the universe while this was happening to see if it was making any noise. And so maybe circumstances would change, and there'd be some reason to change the decision that it's better not played with. It's just a dangerous commodity, consciousness. And so then you could have some sort of in-story, in the sense that you have this intergenerational thing, which could be interesting. It could create a scenario of Captain Kirk versus Spock in terms of the further down the evolutionary line, the personality from the later years might be more cynical and clinical than the personality from the earlier year. And then you can do the man-woman thing in there too, and create a whole romance thing and something like that. So that's one theme of an idea. The other thing I've always been interested in, since I don't know how long ago I conceived of the notion of, probably 15 years ago, for something like that, maybe longer even, the idea of a replicating machine, a human-made machine that replicated, the idea that it would go to another planet, harvest what it could, mineralize-wise, just create the substances needed to synthesize a copy of itself, to build, construct a copy of itself. And theoretically, there's no reason why such a machine couldn't be built, a self-contained little mining machine, that puts pieces together, parts, and especially if some parts were, like, say it was given 100 CPUs to start with, or 1,000 CPUs even, some of the parts could be created, and then it could copy itself 1,000 times theoretically before it ran out of parts. But even, like I said, I think all the parts could be synthesized or built or created. And you'd create some sort of scenario where either these machines, a civilization decides to release one of these. You could do it a lot of different ways. You could have this as some sort of alien device with an alien intelligence, and the human race has to argue with it. It shows up, it declares us worthy of conversation, and then we have to demonstrate why we're doing something that it considers valuable or useful, and why we're not making a mess and cleaning up half of it. And somehow how we are a profitable enterprise. The parasite can justify itself. What the hell is that? Anyway, it's not the camera I'm using, so I guess it doesn't matter. And so you can make the story interesting from two perspectives. You could have this coming to Earth and the dilemma of conversation with it, and it would be this highly intelligent thing, or you could even have it synthesize a body for the home intelligence lives in. And it could be interesting just because it would have a story of evolution that might be similar to our own and some other kind of bullshit like that. And where you could do comparisons, cultural style comparisons between intelligent life as it evolved on some other planet versus Earth. I tend to avoid those kind of scenarios. I would tend to like to avoid those just because then it opens the door to some sort of possibility of this being a reality, which I think the evidence sort of indicates is not. Just as I pointed out with the replicating machine idea, you would think complex, highly complex, our civilization with 1 million more years of technology, if that was possible, would certainly be capable of building such devices. And you would think anything in the universe with the capacity to make them would set them loose with regardless of intention. It could just be a hello machine, some sort of smiley face that shows up and just says, hi, I'm from that galaxy over there, and it's taken me, 3 million years to get here, and, that kind of thing. And the interesting scenario, too, would be is the machine would obviously have a capacity, if there's some sort of failure, to mutate, for the program to break down, and for it to incorrectly copy and create a whole evolution in itself. The machines could end up evolving, which might also be an interesting scenario. But that forces you to create one of these little plot flaws I talk about, which is you'd have to come up with a reason why, having knowledge of how life works and having knowledge of how to create things in a more fail-safe manner, how we wouldn't, or how an intelligence wouldn't create a replicator that would be incapable of making that mistake, because it would have copies of the blueprints and it could error check. Something biology didn't do in its evolution, because it started from just raw chemistry, and wasn't a deliberately built and sophisticatedly, precisely engineered replicating machine. Where somebody who's building one on purpose, a scientist, a thinking device that's building one on purpose, wouldn't make the same mistakes biology made. In terms of creating a device that creates many more monstrosities than it does improvements. That, as engineering, would seem stupid, and the selection mechanism in the universe would seem so crude that you would end up with a machine that didn't have that would have little likelihood of retaining its function if you allowed it to evolve, because the function of just replicating would become all that would matter, and so it would just end up being the machinery of replication with little else attached, until it became so prevalent in the universe that it had to compete with itself, and then it would run into the same dilemma that all the old replicators had consumed all the minerals or something, which is an interesting scenario. I mean, I haven't done the math on it yet, but if you could figure how many replicators, what's the growth rate of replicators if you set one free, and it took 100 years, let's say, for one to copy itself. That's creating a long time frame. Say it takes it a very long time to find a suitable asteroid or planet to land on and do its mining and find enough resources on that planet to accomplish the task. Giving it 100 years is giving it a lot of time, because clearly once you've developed a machine capable of doing this stuff, it doesn't seem like it should take it that long to do it. But anyway, that's an outside number. But even with that kind of time frame, in universal time frames, you're talking about a lot of machines can be made, in the billions of years the universe may have. So anyway, an idea on that theme I had was an idea like future generations decide to build these machines with the negative purpose of sanitizing the universe, negative from the common human perspective. And then there's some sort of takeover or annihilation of that civilization, and humans have a world war or whatever, and the new occupants of Earth take on the pattern of the old occupants, being life affirmers and all of that stuff. But they have lost a lot of their history. It's broken because of the war, the great, war. And so they don't have knowledge of this technology that we released into the universe thousands of years ago. And the replicator comes home to visit in the distant future and shows up with the test we wrote for it, thousands of years ago, and puts us to the test to see if we can earn our survival, answer the questions correctly, so to speak, measure up to the standards. And maybe there'd be something that'd be very interesting as we're trying to discover what this thing is. It's almost like the first Star Trek episode, unfortunately. It's too bad they made such a mess out of that episode, because it was an interesting scenario. But yeah, at the end, the punchline, would be the realization that this isn't some foreign entity come to attack, but merely our own previous variation, and such. So another scenario was with the replicating machines, is that I could take that and turn it into a thing where a consciousness is stored, a brain, a biological brain. And if two replicators come within contact of each other, then those two replicating machines will share data. And what would be shared also is the agenda of an overview of the primary directive. And so both of them would awaken this biological unit, and then those biological units would evaluate the function of the replication, and whether it's worthy, whether the directive is appropriate or something like that. You could do this breeding thing where there'd be some. Yeah, it's a little hard to do though. You know, in the sense that the new machine would need a new biological director, and that you know, there'd be a child would be raised to be the occupant, you know, on the new replicator. Something like that, you know, some sort of parallel to the Earth dilemma. Maybe the dilemma could be of whether somebody, the entities could have some kind of debate about the ethics of you know, creating this new biological unit that's going to be in this. I was thinking of it being in a virtual reality state, because I love the idea of having a, you know, Matrix style theme, in the sense that a brain is in you know, a very complex virtual reality, you know, where it's in a beaker and it is wakened out of that. And just the idea that it would be, you know, all of a sudden the game would be interrupted. Like you'd have a scene, like the movie would start with the person living some kind of normal life, or, you know, spectacular life, you know, throwing the winning pass in the Super Bowl or something, and right in the middle of that, all of a sudden some little digital text comes on the screen, you know, change of programming, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, the person is taken out of that virtual reality and placed in this, you know, wake-up mode of, you know, like just like living your life now, and all of a sudden something would just, all of a sudden some text would just pop into this, you know, the reality you see would just fade away, and it'd be just some sort of new gameplay, new button to press, you know, to get your new instructions, you know, for the new game you're going to play. You know, it might be an interesting thing to play out as a storyline. So anyway, those are the themes anyway that I'm thinking about. And I did write some stuff years ago, and you know, I just don't think it's held up, you know, and so I think I need to think through it some more, and so I have to choose some sort of theme, and then I'll go maybe through some like scene 1, scene 2, scene 3 thing, just cut it into pieces, you know, beginning, middle, end, and do some work on the story outline. And yeah, so, you know, you want to participate in comments and that kind of stuff, fine. If not, figure it can't hurt. So these might be videos of absolutely no value to some people, and I can understand that. I mean, you know, most of the videos are of no value to most people, so I guess there won't be anything new there. But just thoughts running through the head, and you know, and definitely the theme of the recognition of our, you know, of the dilemma that we are describable as rats in a maze. We are quite literally describable as rat-like creatures in a contrived, synthetic, kind of hopeless perversion, modification of the gameplay. We're not playing a natural game, and we're not playing we're not playing a crude natural game anymore, but we're not playing a smart game either. We're somewhere, you know, better than, you know, grotesquely reflexive, but we are not at all sophisticated in the sense that we are still behaving primarily as instructed by biological necessities, impulses, and psychological, cultural bullshit. that has oriented us and defined the nature of our desire and impetus to play. What we need isn't being defined by the best parts of our brain. Needs are being still defined by the crude biology and the not much better than crude, I don't even know how to describe it, but the almost erroneous and arbitrary conditioning of pop culture kind of it's not random, but it's just the outcome of a non-sophisticated filter. It's not the winner of the culture wars didn't win the contest by some sort of rational standard of brilliance or sensibility or character or class or something meaningful. It was just a stupid circumstantial victory, just decided by silly circumstances. Whether there was ice on a sidewalk somewhere, and whether somebody fell down and cracked their skull, and he would have been the person who invented something, or the world changes and migrates through time, full of silly, idiotic, nonsensical permutations of chance outcome. It's not chance; it implies some sort of randomness to it. Like I said, it's all determined, but there's no structure to what has been determined. It's a determination of just a crude functional mechanism. The rope is going to break. You just don't know what day it breaks on. It doesn't matter what day it breaks on to the rope or to the circumstances that will break the rope, but it will matter to the things underneath the piano the rope is holding up. Kind of bullshit. The two things aren't connected. The circumstances deciding fate have nothing to do with a recognition of how important fate is or how important the course of the evolution will be, how necessary it is to walk up the stairs in the right order, kind of thing, that you can't jump from stair 23 to stair 3, kind of thing. You can get up the stairs that way. So, yeah, that was enough of a video. I mean, you either get this or you don't get this. I just fear it would be good for my own, get myself motivated. It's just one of these many projects I have in the back of my head, that these are the kind of vehicles that are going to be necessary to, it's not enough just to argue a philosophy. You have to argue it through this, emotional mechanism of adventure and storytelling and fantasy. I guess that's the key word. You have to help people feel a philosophy, perhaps before they can think it, or at least sometimes simultaneous with the reasoning. They need the right emotions to go with that reasoning, and sometimes that requires the creation of a backstory, a kind of empathy and sensitivity to something's position. I could probably think of some examples of that, but you could probably just take a character like somebody like a thief or something. If you gave him a good backstory, if you gave him an empathetic story of hardship and trauma, and you could make the perception of the individual radically change. You could go from the same character would be loved or hated based on the context. you understood. The backstory you understood. Something like that. So yeah, that's enough. I already said that's enough, but I think I'll say it's enough again. So anyway, keep doing what I'm doing, keep messing around here, but yeah, it's really kind of discouraging. The level of participation and support is very thin. So, and that's part of the reason why I have to do something new and different. And I want to do something more meaningful than just attempt to make a funny video or something. I mean, I could go back to doing that, and that might help marginally, view numbers and such. But I want to do something, I think, more substantive than that. Yeah. So anyway, until next time.